Respiration is a life process, and whenever we think of respiration, the first thing that comes into our mind is taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. And this is not wrong also, because respiration is actually taking in oxygen, and this oxygen then combines with the food that we have eaten to form carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now this carbon dioxide and water, they are the byproducts, they are not needed in the body. So they need to be thrown out, and only thing we need here is this energy in the form of ATP. One more thing we notice from here, that from the air that we have inhaled, we have used oxygen and we have produced more carbon dioxide and water. As a result, our exhaled air is not same as the air that we inhaled. So this is the component of the air, and this is the percentage of all these. When we exhale, we find that oxygen has reduced because it has been used. From 21% it becomes 16 to 17%. Nitrogen remains unchanged because our cells cannot use atmospheric nitrogen as such. Percentage of carbon dioxide goes up quite a bit, and water also becomes more, for the obvious reasons that carbon dioxide and water are the byproducts of respiration, so their percentage has been increased. To show that our exhaled air contains more water can be done with a simple activity. If we blow our exhaled air on the surface of a mirror, we will find that the surface becomes moist, which proves that exhaled air has more water than present in the air. If we want to prove that exhaled air has more carbon dioxide, we can perform this activity 6.4 given in the book. Now in this activity we have taken two test tubes A and B, and in both the test tubes we have taken freshly prepared lime water. Now in one of the test tubes we have blowed some air which is taken in a syringe or a pichkari, while in other test tube we have blowed the exhaled air with the help of a straw. And we will observe both the test tubes. We will find that in test tube B lime water turns milky very soon, but in test tube A it will take very long time for the lime water to turn milky. So this clearly shows that exhaled air has more carbon dioxide than present in the air. Do you think, students, that oxidation of glucose can occur even in the absence of oxygen? Yes, it does. To prove that, we will do this activity 6.5. In this activity, we have taken fruit juice or sugar solution. Basically, we have taken glucose in a test tube and added some yeast. Now, this test tube should be airtight, but there should be a bent glass tube inside, and the other end of the glass tube is dipped in the lime water. Now, we will leave this arrangement for about 3 to 4 hours, and after 4 hours, we will find that this lime water has turned milky. Now, why will this lime water turn milky? Obviously, we know that there must be carbon dioxide to turn it milky. Now, from where that carbon dioxide came? Now, it can only come from this glucose that we have taken. So, this suggests that the glucose has broken down to form carbon dioxide with the help of this yeast that we have added. Now, this process in which glucose can be broken down in the absence of oxygen is called as fermentation. So now the reaction is like this, that glucose in the presence of yeast forms carbon dioxide and another product is alcohol. Now this reaction can be used to make different kinds of wines using different fruit juices. Now we are in a position to define respiration, which is also called as cellular respiration because it occurs inside the cells of the body. Now this cellular respiration is a complex process which involves the oxidation of the respiratory substrate, which is glucose. Now respiratory substrate is that base on which oxygen acts during respiration to produce energy, and this energy is produced in the form of ATP, which is the energy currency of the cell. This process is a biochemical reaction which involves the use of many enzymes. And with the help of activities, we have already seen that cellular respiration can be divided into two types. One which involves the use of oxygen, aerobic respiration, and the other which occurs in the absence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration. And anaerobic respiration can further be divided into fermentation and respiration in muscles. So we will now see all these types of reactions in detail. First, we will see aerobic respiration, which we know that it is a complete breakdown of food in the presence of oxygen. Now, it involves two steps. First step is glycolysis and second step is Krebs cycle. Glycolysis occurs in cytosol and no oxygen is required in this step. while the second step occurs in mitochondria and we need oxygen for this step. Now in the first step, that is glycolysis, glucose gets converted into pyruvic acid, and in the second step, that is Krebs cycle, this pyruvic acid is further converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now I have given the formulas here of glucose, which is C6H12O6, and pyruvic acid is CH3COCOOH. Now you can easily see that in glucose, one molecule of glucose, there are 6 carbon atoms, while in one molecule of pyruvic acid, there are 3 carbon atoms. So in the first step, a 6 carbon atom molecule has broken down into a 3 carbon atom molecule, and in the second step, this 3 carbon atom molecule has broken down into the simplest form, in the form of a molecule which has single carbon atom. So that is why we say it is a complete breakdown of glucose into the simplest possible product. As a result, a large amount of energy is produced in the form of ATP. So one molecule of glucose gives us 38 ATP of energy. Anaerobic respiration is the incomplete breakdown of the glucose, and it occurs in the absence of oxygen. So it is further divided into two types, and the first type is fermentation. Fermentation occurs with the help of microorganisms like bacteria, yeast, etc. The first step is same as that of aerobic respiration, in which by glycolysis glucose is converted into pyruvic acid. But here the second step is different. Second step here occurs in the cytosol itself, and oxygen is not required in this process, and the products formed are alcohol, which is ethyl alcohol here, and carbon dioxide along with little amount of energy. Now here we see that a 6 carbon atom molecule first breaks into 3 carbon atom molecule, and then this 3 carbon atom molecule breaks into 2 carbon atom molecule. It means this is incomplete breakdown, and that is the reason that energy produced is also very less. Anaerobic respiration also occurs inside the muscle cells when the body is doing some vigorous physical activity or the muscular activity. Now in this case, the oxygen that we are inhaling is insufficient to cater to the high energy demands at that particular time. So as a result, different products are formed in this type of respiration. Now the first process, glycolysis, is same and pyruvic acid is produced, but in the second step, which occurs inside the muscles, lactic acid is produced. Now we can see the formula of lactic acid. It also contains 3 carbon atom molecules. So now here we can see that pyruvic acid, which is a 3 carbon atom molecule, gets converted into lactic acid, which is also a 3 carbon atom molecule. Means there is no further breakdown of this compound pyruvic acid. As a result, the energy produced in this process is also very less. We will now revise the 3 types of respiration with the help of this flow chart. The first step was common to all, that is glucose gets converted into pyruvic acid or pyruvate, and this process occurs inside the cytoplasm. Now you need to notice one thing here, that in this process also some energy has been produced. Now this is approximately 2 ATP energy. Now after this, there are 3 different pathways for the further breakdown. One which occurs in the absence of oxygen. It requires microorganisms and it is called as fermentation. Second, which occurs when there is lack of oxygen inside the muscle cells, and then third, which occurs when there is plenty of oxygen, which occurs inside the mitochondria. So in the absence of oxygen, ethanol is formed. So from 3 carbon atom molecule, 2 carbon atom molecule has been formed. Lack of oxygen, 3 carbon atom changes into 3 carbon atom molecule. While in the presence of oxygen, 3 carbon atom molecule has changed into 1 carbon atom molecule. So the last case is the complete breakdown, and it is called as aerobic respiration, and first 2 cases are the incomplete breakdown, and they are called as anaerobic respiration. We are now in the position of answering this question. How is aerobic respiration different from anaerobic respiration? So students, you can take your time, you can pause the video and think about the answer. And I'm sure you have got the answer right. I have written 4 points of differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and you can check these points. Now, do you think that plants also undergo respiration? Yes. Plants undergo respiration. There is a misconception amongst some students. They think that in plants only photosynthesis occurs and there is no respiration. But we know that is not possible, because energy can be produced only during the process of respiration. If plants will not produce energy, they cannot perform their life processes. But we know that plants are not moving around and they do not have very complex organ systems. So as a result, their energy demands are very less as compared to animals. So for that reason, the rate of respiration in plants is very slow as compared to rate of respiration in animals. So for that reason, during daytime, plants give out oxygen because rate of photosynthesis, which is producing oxygen, is more than rate of respiration, which is producing carbon dioxide. Let's see it again. During daytime, both respiration and photosynthesis are taking place. But respiration rate is slower, photosynthesis rate is faster. During respiration, the amount of carbon dioxide produced is less and all of it is used for the process of photosynthesis. While the product of photosynthesis, that is oxygen, is in plenty and only some of it is used for the process of respiration. As a result, the extra oxygen is released. So during the daytime, net release of gases is only oxygen. While during the night time, respiration is producing carbon dioxide and there is no photosynthesis. So obviously only carbon dioxide is being released during the night time. So that is why people say that we should not sit under a tree during the night time because there is lots of carbon dioxide at that time. We will now briefly check different modes of respiration in different organisms. Amoeba, which is a unicellular organism and it lives inside water. So from water, oxygen simply diffuses inside through the cell membrane and carbon dioxide diffuses out through the cell membrane only. Now earthworm, you must have seen, it has a moist skin and oxygen remain dissolved in this moist skin and from here it diffuses inside the body and carbon dioxide also comes out from here only. Fishes, we know that breathe with the help of the gills. Insects have tiny holes on their body which are called as spiracles and these spiracles lead into tubular structures which are called as trachea and these trachea are further branched so that this oxygen can reach each and every part of the body. Frog can breathe with the help of skin as well as lungs. Now just like earthworm, the body of the frog always remains moist so that oxygen remains dissolved in it and it can go inside the body. And they have a pair of lungs also with the help of which they can respire. So this is the reason frog can live inside the water also when it can breathe with the help of skin. It can live on the land also when it breathes with the help of its lungs. And land animals, they also have a pair of lungs with the help of which they can respire. Fishes respire with the help of their gills. So they take in water through their mouth which flows past the gills which are present just behind the mouth. Now when water moves through the gills which are covered with a large number of blood vessels, so the oxygen from the water enters the blood and carbon dioxide which is present inside the blood, it comes out into the water which flows out of the body. So this is how breathing occurs inside the fishes. But here we know that oxygen which is present in air is quite a lot, which is about 21%, but oxygen which is dissolved in water is very less. But sea animals also have lots of energy requirements. That is why they have to breathe very fast so they can get sufficient amount of oxygen in the body. So now this question is, why is the rate of breathing in aquatic organisms faster than in terrestrial organisms? Answer we know now, that in aquatic organisms use oxygen which is dissolved in water which is very less as compared to oxygen which is present inside the air. Breathing in humans is a mechanical process. It involves intake of oxygen, that is inhalation, and release of carbon dioxide, that is exhalation. Now for the breathing purpose, two parts play a very important role. Now one of them is ribs. There are 12 pair of ribs present in the body which form a rib cage that surround the lungs and the heart. Now these ribs, by their movements, they can increase or decrease the chest cavity. Now first we will see how can they increase the chest cavity. Now there are intercostal muscles in the rib which can move them. If the ribs move upwards and then outwards, the chest cavity volume increases. While when the ribs move downwards and inwards, then the volume of the chest cavity decreases. When volume increases, pressure will become lesser. When volume will decrease, the pressure will rise inside the chest cavity. Now the second thing that helps in the breathing process is this muscular partition which is called as diaphragm. Now this diaphragm divides thorax cavity from the abdomen. Now, when this diaphragm muscles are in the relaxed state, it remains curved. So, it is curved like this. As a result, it is pushing the chest cavity upwards. Now, when the muscles contract, it becomes flat. Flat means it will move a little down. As a result, the chest cavity volume will increase. So, with the movements of ribs and the diaphragm, we can change the volume of the chest cavity. As a result, pressure will also vary during these movements and the breathing will occur. So now we will see that inhalation or inspiration, what is happening. First we will see only this process, inhalation. Ribs move upwards and outwards and diaphragm flattens. Volume of the chest cavity increases, so pressure will decrease and air will be sucked inside the lungs because atmospheric pressure is more, but the pressure inside the chest cavity has become lesser. And similarly, exhalation occurs by the reverse movements. Now ribs have moved downward and inward, diaphragm becomes curved, volume will decrease and pressure will increase. As a result, with the increased pressure, air inside the lungs is pushed out of the body. So this is how inhalation and exhalation occurs inside the human body. Tell me now that in 1 minute, how many times an adult human breathes? I hope your answer is not 72 times. Human adult can breathe 12 to 14 times in 1 minute, while human infant breathes 44 times a minute because infants are still learning to breathe, so they breathe more times in 1 minute. Dolphin, which is a mammal, it has to come out of the water 4 to 5 times in 1 minute so that it can breathe because it also breathes with the help of lungs. Whales, which are also mammals, they can live without breathing for at least 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours also. Now the whales have this unique ability that they can shut down their organs when they are not required. As a result, it can conserve the oxygen that is inhaled before coming out of the water to take in more oxygen. Now oxygen we have taken in the body, which goes into the lungs, and from lungs it has to go to all the parts of the body. And we have seen earlier that it can't go to all the parts by diffusion because it will take very long time. So then how does oxygen reach each and every cell of the body? About that we know that there is a red colored pigment called hemoglobin present inside the body, and our oxygen combines with this hemoglobin to form a complex compound called as oxyhemoglobin, and then this compound is taken to all the cells within few seconds of inhalation. Now the carbon dioxide that we have given out during the process of respiration, it comes out of the cells into the blood, and in the blood either it gets dissolved in the plasma because carbon dioxide is highly soluble in water, or it comes in the form of bicarbonate with water. So it is brought back in these two forms. Now again the question time. Now can you tell me what will be the consequence of deficiency of hemoglobin in the blood? I hope you got it also right. Anemia will be caused because less hemoglobin means less oxygen is reaching the cells. That means less respiration and less production of energy. So if the energy inside the body is less, then we will feel weak, pale, lethargic, tired all the time, and we will feel sleepy all the time. This figure shows the parts of the human respiratory system that we are going to study in detail. Now the first part of human respiratory system is a pair of external nostrils. These are just the openings which are present at the lower end of the nose, and these openings open into a cavity which is called as nasal cavity. So two nostrils open into two nasal cavities. These two cavities are separated from each other with the help of nasal septum, which is made up of cartilage. Now inside the nasal cavity there is lining of air, and also there are mucus glands, and these nasal cavities perform many functions. So first function is it warms and moistens the air, it traps the dust particles in the air, and it traps the microbes in the mucus which has been produced by the gland cells. Along with it, it has olfactory receptors also which help us to smell. These nasal cavities open into a funnel shaped part called as pharynx. We have earlier also read about pharynx, that it is a common passage for food from buccal cavity and for air from the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity opens into trachea through an opening which is called as glottis. Now when we are swallowing anything, like this time this green part is showing the food is being swallowed into the food pipe. Now while we are swallowing the food, glottis is closed with the help of a cartilaginous flap called as epiglottis. So every time anything is being swallowed, epiglottis closes the glottis so that nothing can enter into the trachea. Because if even by chance a small piece of food will enter our trachea, it will suffocate us to death. That is why this epiglottis is very important here. After pharynx, larynx is present, which is again made up of cartilage, and its significance is that it has vocal cords. These vocal cords vibrate when we exhale and sounds of different kinds can be produced. Larynx opens into trachea, which is a thin wall tube, and it is made up of hyaline cartilage. Actually, there are rings of cartilage all along the trachea. The significance of these rings is that they prevent the collapsing of the windpipe. So all the time this windpipe remains open. Trachea divides into branches called as bronchi, and each bronchus enters into each lung. This is trachea, and we can see rings of cartilage on this trachea. After a while, the trachea divides into two branches which are called as bronchi, and each bronchi enter into the lungs. Now inside the lungs, these bronchi divide into further branches which are called as secondary bronchi, and when secondary bronchi further divide, they are called as tertiary bronchi, and tertiary bronchi further gives out the branches which are called as bronchioles. Now this is not the end. Bronchioles then further divide to form alveolar ducts, and at the end of the alveolar ducts there are alveolar sacs or the alveoli which are balloon shaped. Now these structures, alveoli, are the actual structures where exchange of gases are taking place, so we can well imagine how protected they are. Inside the lungs they are present, and outside the lungs there is a double layered protective membrane which is called as pleura, and the lungs are present inside the rib cage. So alveoli are well protected inside it. Part of the respiratory system where actual gaseous exchange is taking place is alveoli. Now these alveoli are developed to perform their function. They are balloon shaped, which increases their surface area. They are thin walled so that gases can easily pass through them, and they are surrounded by a large number of blood capillaries so that oxygen can easily directly go into the blood. These three features help in easy exchange of gases between the blood and the lungs. After we have exhaled, there is still some quantity of air present in the lungs, which is called as residual volume of air. Now this air gives sufficient time to oxygen to get absorbed into the blood. It also enables the cells to survive if for some reason we do not get oxygen for a few seconds. But remember that brain cells die within 3 minutes if their oxygen supply is cut off.